The UA LARPing Club by Domoz. Read by Shockwave. Chapter 1. A Realization, an Exam, a Letter. It's just been my dream since I was little, Midoriya stuttered, and I won't know unless I try. It was like this, a familiar scene in the back of a classroom. One Bakugou Katsuki, very unhappy with the announcement that Izuku Midoriya was planning on trying to get into UA. What do you mean unless you try? You're quirkless. Don't you try and stand at the same level as me. Bakugou sneered back, palms sparking. Don't think you can try and be a hero, you useless Deku. Izuku has been on the end of this conversation plenty of times, and as his eyes drift over Kacchan's shoulder to look at the teacher ignoring commotion and straightening papers, he knew this would end the same way as always, with a few new burn marks and bruises to hide from his mom. Bakugou leaned in closer. The only one going into UA for this damn school is me! Izuku jumped as Kacchan punched his hand into the wall next to his head. He knew what came next, and he really wasn't feeling it today. I'm only taking the test, the words spelled out. I'll give up once they fail me! You better! Bakugou laughed, and the class laughed behind him. Izuku, acknowledging that he couldn't make it, seemed to be enough to assuage him. For now. The rest of the class went by in a blur, partially because it actually was, since Izuku was blinking through tears the whole time. After class, he took a long moment to stare down at his hands. It wasn't as though he hadn't thought about it before, but saying it out loud made it feel more real. He knew, realistically, his chances of getting into UA's hero course were slim to none. Even general studies would be a stretch, considering it was one of the top schools in the nation. He really probably wouldn't make it, but some part of him couldn't stomach giving up either. Bakugou slammed his hands down on Midoriya's desk, the loud pop jolting him out of his thoughts. See you at the entrance exam, Deku, he taunted. Izuku gave a sigh of relief as Bakugou turned to leave. He made a fool enough of himself today that Kacchan didn't feel the need to antagonize him further. He would take what he could get. That day when he walked home slowly, deep in thought, as if the day wasn't bad enough, when he got there, he found out that All Might had subdued a villain only 2 blocks away. And he missed him! His mom, always worried for him, asked if he was okay at dinner, and Izuku swallowed the lump in his throat and said in a weak voice, Actually, I've been thinking. Will you help me look at some backup schools after dinner? He didn't miss the moment of sheer relief that she tried to hide. Of course, dear, I'd be happy to. When Izuku got home from taking the UA entrance exam, the first thing he did was run into his room, lock the door, and slide to the ground with a sob. He hadn't managed to take out a single robot. Oh, the academic portion had been fine. Easier than he was expecting even. But he didn't score a single point in the practical portion. The only robot he managed to get even near was the 0-pointer, and that was because he was frozen in fear for so long that it came towards him. The only good he managed to do was help a girl he had bumped into before the start of the exam towards the gate once it was all over. She seemed nice. He'd hoped she'd make it. He choked down sobs for the better part of 2 hours before pulling himself into bed, fully exhausted. Mom had told him dinner was in the fridge if he got hungry, but she didn't sound too hopeful, and Izuku knew he wouldn't be able to stomach much of anything right now anyways. He sniffled and curled into a ball, willing himself to fall asleep. Miserable as he was also exhausted, and it wasn't as though he hadn't expected this. He had just had to get over himself. And thank God for small mercies. Bakugou saw the dead look in his eyes the next day, and got bored fast with Izuku's non-reactions and more or less left him alone. Sneering at him that he'd failed didn't do anything to him. He already knew that. He had been buzzing with anxiety ever since the exams. They had gone bad. He knew that. But maybe, just maybe, he had done so well on the written exam they would let him in anyways? Or maybe another person named Izuku had gotten enough points to pass and the two of them would just get mixed up? No, he couldn't do that to someone else. But still, it wasn't impossible. He couldn't make himself totally give up on hope for UA until he knew for sure. Though he was already steeling himself for disappointment on that front, his brain also kept telling him that he had somehow failed so badly that none of the schools he applied for would even accept him. He would end up some kind of useless hero fanboy NEET, a stupid, useless Deku. But he didn't know that for sure. He'd keep telling himself that. So, to distract himself, every time he had thoughts like that, he would go out for a walk and, more often than not, would end up hero chasing. That day he came home ecstatic, bursting through the door with a huge smile on his face. "Mom, I saw All Might today." He was in a rant about Hero's mood, heedless of what weighed him inside. "I heard he was sighted around the area a few times, but I saw him today. He was super cool. There was this shark villain at the gas station. He took him out in one punch. I didn't get close to get an autograph bus." His words slowed as he actually looked around for a moment to see his mother at the kitchen counter with a pile of letters in front of her. "That's great, sweetie," she said with a watery smile. You got some mail today." Carefully, in both hands, she was holding an envelope. One from all the way across the room Izuku could see had the UA logo on it. His good mood instantly plummeted, but he tried to put on a smile. His mom already looked worried enough as it was. "Oh, that's great." He carefully shut the door and took off his shoes and walked into the kitchen, it all feeling unbearably slow. He didn't reach out to take the letter, but Inko sat in front of him ever so gently, like it was a ticking time bomb waiting to go off. And, well... Izuku stared at it, pressure building in his throat and behind his eyes, dimly aware of his mom nervously fidgeting. He knew what it was. He knew. And that is exactly why he didn't want to open it. He said, and he knew his voice sounded wobbly. He hated the way it made his mom's face twist up. "Maybe you should wait until the other ones from the other schools get here before opening it, just so we can see the other options laid out." He managed to keep his voice more or less steady, to his own surprise. His mother nodded, but looked down guiltily. "Of course, dear. That makes sense." He smiled at her, and she knew him long enough not to buy it, but she didn't say anything when he said, "I'm just gonna go to my room. I have to write some stuff about that fight down." A lie, of course, and she knew it. He had the notebook with him, and he had written down everything already. She averted her eyes as he took the envelope with him into his room and closed the door. Izuku was tired of crying, especially in front of his mom, and they both knew that's what he just fled to do. "Like ripping off a Band-Aid," he told himself over and over. "If I get this over with now, I'll be much happier when another school accepts me. If they even accept me." He took a deep breath and tried to force his brain out that spiral of thoughts. Just get this over with. His hands were shaking as he peeled off the seal. Did they really use a real wax seal? Maybe with someone's quirk? And pulled out the folded sheet of paper. Already his heart jumped. It was one single thin sheet. Already not a good sign. He stared at it for a long moment and let out a shaky breath. Just rip it off. "Izuku Midoriya, we regret to inform you that you did not score in a high enough percentile to make it into UA's hero course." Well, that was it, wasn't it? Izuku's vision blurred with the tears he stupidly thought he'd be able to hold back. He had said that when he didn't make it into UA, he would give up on his dream. He would never be a hero. He was so stupid to ever thought he could be. So useless. A waste of everyone's time. He sobbed, then caught himself and tried to keep it quiet. He didn't want his mom to worry any more than he knew she already was. He swiped at the tears in his eyes a few times to try and finish the letter. Would they tell him just how badly he had done? "However, your test scores in the academic portions were high enough for you to be placed in the general education curriculum if you should so desire. If you wish to proceed with enrolling, you may contact the Department of Admissions with the information listed at the bottom of this sheet." Izuku's eyes glazed over the list of email addresses and phone numbers. His mind ran completely blank for a long minute. What? He hadn't gotten into the hero course, but he had gotten into UA? He had gotten to the school where All Might had studied? And Midnight, and Present Mike, and some Montos, and he had told himself that when he didn't get into UA, he would give up on his dream of becoming a hero. But he had gotten in. Kind of. What was he supposed to do with that? The fact of the matter that whether it was for the hero course or not, UA was one of, if not the, top school in the country. He would be a fool not to accept the offer to attend. That night his mom had cried. The good kind of crying, the happy kind, and hugged him and made him katsudan, and the next afternoon he was again walking into UA's campus, trying to hide the stars in his eyes and stay focused. He had gotten into UA. He'd be there as a student in less than a month, so he'd have plenty of time to marvel then. Mostly, he was here to do paperwork. It looked like a few others were there doing the same, though most of them paid him only a glance as he walked in. And there, with a fold-out table and chair covered in stacks of papers and folders, was present Mike with an easygoing grin. If he wasn't starry-eyed before, Izuku certainly was now. He started. I'm here to do some paperwork for the general education course. Of course you are, little listener. His voice, even without using his quirk, was loud enough that the others in the chairs around the edges of the room looked up, looking various levels annoyed. What's your name? Midoriya Izuku. The pro hero, kindly, didn't even react to his voice cracking. Present Mike, the Present Mike, nodded and rifled through the folders on the desk until he found the folder he wanted, scanned through it, and handed Izuku a stack of papers inside, as well as a clipboard and pen. Just fill these out and get back to me, and you're golden. Izuku nodded and scurried off to find a chair. There wasn't much, a waiver saying he agreed to be in the general education course rather than the heroics one he had applied for, the sizes he would need for his uniform, and the information he'd want printed on his student ID. Being the overthinker that he was, even that small amount took Izuku considerable consideration, and he was the last one in the room by the time he walked over to the desk and handed it back. President Mike accepted it with a nod, and he was ready to bow and leave when he said, One more thing, little listener. We couldn't find records of your quirk from your old school. Mind filling us in? You didn't have to officially register your quirk until you turned 18 because of the changes they could go through as a kid grew. Schools would keep records of quirks as a part of a student's growth, too, but... Izuku froze as he really hoped that President Mike didn't catch the look of panic that crossed over his face as he realized the question. Oh no. If they were asking him about that meant they cared about it. And what that meant when he said, "Oh, I don't have one," they would realize their mistake and revoke his chance to go to UA. And he couldn't get that up. Not now. One was the only thing he had left. So he had to say something, and he had to say it quickly. But that meant something invisible. Something that no one could actually prove he didn't have. He bowed in the hopes that President Mike wouldn't see his face. I'm sorry, my quirk is select manipulation. He winced internally. That sounded way too cool and powerful not to be questioned. It's impossible to prove, so I have never had it formally registered. The silence afterwards stretched on for longer than was comfortable, and then Izuku heard the scratch of a pen on paper. Did he realize? Was he going to excel before he could even start school? All right, said President Mike, apparently unaffected by the awkward tension. No need to apologize. Just gotta do my due diligence, you dig? Have a good day, little listener. Izuku nodded, then turned to make his way out of the building as quickly as he dared without looking suspicious. Behind him, Hisashi Yamada looked back at the figure that had been slouching in the shadows of the doorway. That was pretty weird, huh, Sho? You ready to go? Yeah, said the man with a slight shrug. Someone's gonna have to keep an eye on that one. Hi guys, I got permission from Domoz to read this fanfiction, so below is both the original fanfiction and the permission I got from Domoz. There's also my other link for another way to listen to this podfic, and I hope you all enjoyed listening to me today. Thank you, and have a good day.